Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, wherever you might be in the world today. As Ali said, my name is Stefan Ranchetti. I'm a pre-sales director here, and I'll be stepping everybody through the planning space in the Oracle EPM Enterprise Suite today. So before we do that, a quick background for those of you who might not be familiar with NRL. Really, the mission summarizes it. We're here to leave the world a smarter place, whether that's through webcasts such as this, one-on-one conversations, implementation cycles. We really are here and in the business of education. And that starts with relationships. And I know that very much this is a presentation today, but it's about you as a recipient group. And so in the Zoom functionality space, there is a Q&A section. So please, at any point during this conversation today, let's have that relationship. Ask me some questions. If I don't address it right away during the demo, don't be alarmed. We'll get to it at the tail end of the conversation today. Now, at NRL, we are award-winning, and that's part of the reason we continue this educational push for people is keep that, we'll say, strategy going where we leave the world a smarter place. And the emphasis here is on recognized experts, ACE directors, 6 of them with Oracle, best-selling books, partnerships, the most experienced, as you see, first EPBCS implementation, first close implementation. And really, again, this webcast is a continuation of that dynamic that we try to create with folks in the EPM world. As an addition to what I just mentioned, the books, as I referenced, lots of best-selling BI and EPM books out there from those aforementioned Oracle ACE experts here at NRL. So today, the focus, of course, is on Planning Cloud, and we'll get into that very shortly. But know that next week, there's another presentation on Essbase, a break demo month resumes in January. I put this out there just for your information purposes. So if there are other topics, ideas, considerations you have in mind, please join us for the webcasts that are coming up each week of this demo month. Now, planning specifically, before we jump into the live environment here to walk through some of the best practices that are enabled as part of the Planning Cloud, I want to put this up here because historically in the EPM space, and I come from an FP&A background over a decade doing this, is oftentimes when the right tools are not in place, as an example, questions can only be answered that are situational. What are the top 10 markets? Where it's gap to forecast, for example. What the EPM Cloud, Oracle EPM Cloud allows you to do is ask questions about how to improve, not just what does it look like. So if we increase promotional lift by 10%, what happens to the forecast if the dollar declines to the euro? The idea in this Oracle EPM Cloud is to give you a dynamic, continuous, agile space to make decisions instead of having to be backward looking all the time. And so with that, we're going to jump right into the live environment. And again, as I step through this, I'm going to talk about, highlight, touch on best practices that I've seen in the industry, best practices that I've experienced. That said, please ask questions. If there's something that you would like more clarity on or a curiosity that it might arise as part of this discussion, please put it out there and we will certainly address it. So this is an example of what the login or welcome page could look like for you as an end user group. Now, the beauty of this tool is not the fact that it's SaaS, right? Software as a solution. That's what it is. What this does actually is facilitate that nonstop approach to strategic and operational planning, that dynamic and continuous sort of fueled approach by accurate real-time information. Right. We're going to focus mainly on the financial forecasting aspect of this as we step through it today, but know that this shouldn't just be limited to the planning space. My experience has been the organizations that are the most successful take this enterprise planning space and create a connection across the business from financial planners, operational planners, sales planners, all in one space in that same architecture, allows you to connect all of those in real time and get access to all those different parts of the business and help you make more informed, more dynamic decisions. Now, in this particular space that we exist in today, I've signed in at the top right screen, you'll see as a power user. Now, I point this out only because many times questions arise as to who gets access to what information and how does that informational access look. So in this admin space, I've opened up mostly everything that exists within this planning tool space. Now, depending on the user group, it could be a capital group. It could be project related. It's very quick and simple for you as a team to adjust the way, and we'll use capital as an example, that end users can access the information. Not just the structure of the underlying data, but the actual, we'll call them navigation points through the tool that a user might require as part of their planning tasks. And I point this out simply because many of my roles and many roles that I'm sure you've been in the past, it requires a certain subset of information and just that information. And having access to everything from a visual perspective as well, all that extraneous detail is not required. Distill it down for those users in the way that makes the most sense for them. And so with that, we're going to start with financials. And after financials, we'll pivot into projects. We'll look at capital. We'll look at workforce as those four main modules that exist within the Oracle Enterprise Planning space. And then with that, we'll certainly touch on those absolutely valuable but tangentially related items, the reports, as it were, dashboards, any of those items that you utilize to view the output and interaction from that perspective. That said, to begin the conversation, before we get into the full financials view, we'll have a look at a dashboard. Now, many dashboards within the Oracle Planning Cloud come out of the box. Here's an example of one that I've created for purposes of today's conversation to highlight, as is very evident, financial detail. Now, remember this because we're going to come back to the dashboard conversation to round out this conversation at the end of it today, just to highlight the fact that even though as a conversational flow today, we're going to talk analysis and long-range forecast, revenue, and go into projects, very linear path. In reality, the FP&A planning operational process is not so linear. So the tool helps facilitate that ease of use navigation from, we'll say, project planning to financial planning to sales planning, all within that same point of view. Now, in the dashboard space, these are, okay, they're nice colors, they're great looking, but the real beauty lies in harnessing that underlying power. So as an example, you see total other expenses is 7.54 million. Great. What comprises that? Simple click of a button, the end user can drill down even further to get more information, more analysis in real time to answer a question in the moment, or maybe proactively answer a question they know might be coming. And I'll show this again as we circle back at the tail end of the dashboard discussion, that as an end user group, it's not just that you can harness the power, it's that it's the simplicity in creating something of this nature that really enables FP&A and other planning groups to work efficiently and very accurately. Now, in the finance space, we'll start with the conversation about long-range / strategic modeling. Now, this is purpose-built for scenario modeling. It gives you those rich features like side-by-side financial and operational views, analysis of numerous business scenarios, letting you change assumptions, change logic, mix and match scenarios, again, to let you as that FP&A and planning group examine the possibilities and answer those, we'll say, what-if questions, as opposed to simply stating, here we are in the moment. Before we run through analysis on the strategic modeling side, I want to point out this consolidation feature. Now, this is quite neat in that it lets you consolidate multiple different models as it exists in your long-range planning, lets you consolidate over specific time horizons, exclude specific groups of accounts, include account, takes account of account eliminations. And it's that cross-consolidation support that really proves to be valuable when, say, for example, you have this particular model, but you'd also like to pull in a previously created model and only use a section of it. And the contributing scenario, we just want, we'll stay with the premium and hit OK. Point of me running through this quickly like I've just done is to start the conversation or highlight the fact that from an end user perspective, the ease of use really facilitates further and more easier discussion and analysis. So you're not spending time on the, we'll call it architecture logistics. You get to spend time on the analysis and decision-making that results from that ease of use. Now, for the sake of argument, this is the model we're going to go with, and the scenario expansion and income statement account group. We'll go down a couple of levels here. So we started with that high-level model, and we want to look at some specific details. And this is, again, that theme of transparency and ease of use. So if a user comes in and they are curious, in this case, about product sales. What is the formula utilized to comprise product sales? In this particular instance, it is simply a free form, we'll call it a free form type formula. And you can see the syntax, very, very easy to use for end users. So it's not an IT iterative dynamic required to create something of this nature. In this case, it's just account 300 times 305. You as a user can add more, edit, adjust as you see fit to accomplish any type of analysis that you need. And to highlight again the ease of use in doing this, we'll create a new scenario so I can point out just how simple it is to adjust this type of information. So with the drop down, will be a theme as we step through this as well. Try this again. Should open up here a screen for us that allows us to insert a new scenario in the moment, selecting, as it were, we'll say product sales, creating an entirely new formulaic convention based on how we want to analyze that. And then that scenario should appear right now, allowing you to compare it to any of those other scenarios that are available to you for review. For some reason, this browser is not popping this particular view up right now, but we'll move on from that. So the next point I want to discuss with you is the idea of traceability, auditability in those formulas that people utilize as part of their analysis process. So if you do want to select this particular view and jump right into that account creation view, maybe it's, say, services revenue. How is this value derived? Not just the fact that it's this particular value times something else, as you see here, 27.42 million is a product of this percent multiplied by that, and that navigation, you can keep drilling back, drilling back, drilling back, drilling back to the very first, item that's created this value you want to look at. This audit trail, and we'll touch on audit trails again in a little bit when we look at some of the revenue and expense planning. Point of showing this is to highlight again how easy it is for you as an end user group to start from point A, go to point B, C, D, X, Y, any number of jumps that you'd like to take to help with the analysis. All of that's there for you. Instead of the old Excel, control bracket, trace precedent, trace dependence, and hope you find those downstream impacts to any of those values. So with respect to that, assuming you trace this information all the way back to the start point, you have a good idea of how this value has been derived. Now maybe you want to make some changes. So we will change this value now you see highlighted in yellow. Visual representation for you, real time, any of the impacts from making that one change in that particular strategic model. Again, don't have to trace dependence. You get in the moment that downstream view of any and all of those impacts as it flows through the system. And not just, as it were, in this particular account group that is an income statement, but it'll downstream into any of your financial statements, whether it's the balance sheet, in this case, indirect cash flow, income statement. So you make a change as an end user, the system captures it, cascades it down to all those relevant areas. You have the information in real time. But again, not just you in the real time, any of those financial planners, operational planners that might depend on these changes, the analysis that you're working on, will see that impact and update when they're in the system as well. And one of the things that is very powerful in Oracle's Enterprise Cloud is the ability to run, I call it a combination of simulation and goal seek. So as an example, as part of the analysis this period, we're looking at net sales, how that impacts and rolls into gross profit, and of course, operating profit all the way down into net income. We're curious what this will do if we update values in total sales before taking into consideration any of the discounts and returns, as it were. So this value, we're going to run a simulation on the sales value to examine possibilities that exist of something occurring. Now, I've already pre-selected some of these items in terms of the, say, dependence and some of the, for example, unit volume, things of this nature. So what you as an end user group can do is select the item that you want to run a simulation on, and then the tool is built with Monte Carlo simulation in it to run through. I've got, I believe, set up as 500 different simulation possibilities to account for uncertainties that exist in the real world. So I'll select a few more. You choose the assumptions. In this case, service revenues as an example. There's a likeliest outcome. You choose the minimum, choose the maximum. If it's, for example, maintenance revenue that you want to include as well. If you know the high mark, low mark, select those different types of assumptions. Same thing with unit volume. And then as a group, you run the simulation. It kicks out a percentage possibility that exists for that particular outcome. And what you then do, and what I've seen people do quite frequently, is to say, all right, if according to our simulation, this sales value of 936 million is, say, 50% probable, then you can come into the income statement view and say, all right, if we want that value to go up, we know that part of that sales number is based on unit volume. And we know that with that 50% chance, we're willing to take that 50% chance to get there. Let's see what we'd have to increase unit volume by to get to that value. So in this case, go to 855. And run the goal seek. You can see the results at the bottom now say that in order for us to attain that simulated value that we feel comfortable getting to, we'd have to increase our unit volume to 21.185 million and increase our forecasted growth rate like this. Now, one of the beauties of this is unlike some other systems, some old Excel models, where you'd have to copy and paste this in, hope the formulas are still properly working, the linkages to different sheets, hit F9 a whole bunch of times. You can just save this value. You'll see right then and there, that is now inserted into your scenario modeling space. So you, again, don't have to worry about the logistics of managing a system. You get to focus on the decisions and the outcomes that come about as a result. And again, it's not just in that view where you're working with the tool, it's all those downstream reporting spaces. The logic is built in for the cash flow, income statement, balance sheet, or an example like this, where you can see that expansion scenario compared to your base/official version. So you have immediate insight into what that might look like and if that is a viable option for your organization on a go-forward basis. The last thing before we move into some of the revenue and expense planning, oftentimes this long-range strategic model is handled by a handful of people, and it can be disconnected from that annual operating plan or the budget for that particular year. The beauty of this is not outside of that sphere of influence, but it's connected too. So that instead of long-range planners being separate from budget planners not knowing and not having that sync together, here long-range planners can base some of their numbers off what the budget and actuals were from last year. The folks who are working on the annual operating plan can incorporate long-range plan into their numbers to ensure alignment across, again, time periods, across organizational units, operational divisions, and with button clicks, then push, in this case, that long-range plan with any of those bottom-up targets. And with that, user groups can then move into some of the specific revenue planning for this particular period as they step through the year. Now, the concept of dashboards is going to come up quite frequently. Every space that I've configured for purposes of our conversation today begin with a dashboard. That visual representation, easy to access for you as the end user group. Just again, the first read into where the numbers might be for that particular period. I'd like to point out for those that might not be familiar with this planning tool, that the power really that sits underneath all of this is Essbase. And Essbase has a long and storied history in this EPM realm. But I point that out because everything that we touch on today in terms of looking at values is driven by this notion of dimensionality. And that's exemplified in this particular view by entity being one of the dimensions, version being a dimension, reporting currency, years as example. So So really, these are the intersection of these 4 dimensions, as you see it right now, is what presents this set of data to us as a group reviewing this. So changing any one of these, as an example, as you see, would change that set of information represented to you for analysis purposes. And from a role security perspective, that's another way that you can distill down relevant information to folks is maybe they have the same navigation flow, as it were, as they step through the tool, but they only have access to sales entity, or they only have access to the manufacturing entity. So you can create a structure or guidepost around how the information is presented to people. And then you control what information is presented as part of, say, a cost of sale dashboard in this case. And as we step through the top, just other examples of what dashboards can look like. Now, these are out of the box. Again, we'll circle back to the dashboard concept at the beginning to show the ease of use for you as the end user group in creating, maintaining, and working with any of the dashboards as you see it here. Now, to start working with forecasting or budgeting, planning, I've configured a driver-based process in the revenue side. And as we step into expense side, it'll be a little more line item by line item. And that's part of the beauty too, is you can select whether it's driver-based, whether there's predictive, whether it's direct entry, maybe it's a trend-based process, what makes the most sense, not just for the company, but for a specific division in the company or a specific cost center within that division, if there are items that need to be mixed and matched in that fashion. Again, the concept of dimensionality with respect to scenario, version, currency, as you see them across the top. And then in this particular instance, the drivers that are being utilized to, again, push those downstream forecasts through the system. These are out of the box. Know, of course, that you're not limited to what you see here, right? There's certainly a space for you to add those unique drivers that are relevant to you in your industry and business. We'll change this. Maybe we want a direct entry piece over the top. You'll see a slight movement in the dashboard down below, again, highlighting the fact that there is that real-time impact, real-time ability for you to ascertain the impacts the moment you make the change. Along those lines, the audit trail. Now, this is a subtly different audit discussion than we were having on the strategic modeling side. This particular audit is going to give you that time and date stamp username for who made changes, when they made changes, and what those changes look like. So if you choose, instead of having, as was my history in FP&A, December forecast version 2.A final -B, because one subtle change was made to the prior version. In this case, you can keep the same version name if you like, and if you need to revert back, look at that audit trail and see what the value was, who changed it, and if you need to adjust accordingly. Oops. Not just what the changes were, right? But context of the changes. And that's really the key here is 2 million, it's a great number, fine. But the real value lies in the fact that that context that helps explain the values to you is that not just the FP&A group, but those downstream who are using this information to make decisions. It's all available within the system itself. So you're not having to manage a SharePoint site for this context. You're not having to manage Word documents or emails. What you need alongside the numbers is right here at your fingertips. So the changes are made just like that. You see that downstream impact into the revenue overall. We could predict some volume if you'd like, and that's a tool that I've seen utilized by many groups. Sure, some use it to actually seed the forecast values for that period or the budget values. Some will take it as simply a yardstick to measure their driver-based values against, to sort of rule of thumb. Are we getting close to what history suggests that we should be? Options exist there, right? Whatever makes the most sense for you and that organizational group that's using it, configure it and use it in that fashion. And then the outputs. Get total revenue from the forecast, total revenue from the plan, and we'll have the space to do some what ifs. Now, I've broken it out in terms of forecast revenue and plan revenue to highlight the fact that oftentimes people have, right, their annual operating budget. They have the January forecast, quarterly forecast, And this gives you that space to align all of those different views of the information in one easy to access space. And then for those times when you just want to, and I say this in a completely non-pejorative sense, play with the details. You've got your official version, but you have an idea of what would it look like? I just want to mess with the numbers and see how this could shake out. Now, the beauty of this, again, is letting the tool manage we'll call it logistical heavy lifting. So that quickly and easily, as an end user, you can create a new version. I'm going to throw a large number here just to as examples. Now you see on the right, that quickly, that easily, you've done a what if, created some driver changes for that version. You've got immediate insight into how that compares to that official version that's being utilized by everybody else in the planning space. Right, the real beauty of that is you're not constrained by a tool in how much analysis you can undertake in any given moment. Now, there are plenty of times, right, that there is expert level information that you have from being in a specific industry that might not be captured from an historical perspective. That a new program might be in place to increase sales over a particular period, or there is a driver that's just not capturing the detail that you really need. So in that particular case, always the ability for you to overlay information above and beyond what those other out-of-the-box processes might deliver for you. In this particular case, I'm going to highlight one of the items, and we'll come back to this in a little while as well, that allows you as a end user group to work in two different UIs, as it were. You've got, of course, the web UI, as you see it right here, but there's also this, for those of you that might not be familiar, Smart View, and that allows you as an end user group to access everything and anything that I've shown you so far and will show you through the MS Office interface. And give me 1 second, I'm going to pull it over from a different monitor. So while this might not be as pretty as that web UI at the moment, some formatting options to remove the missing values. Point of this is everything, as I mentioned, that I was doing in the web UI, you can certainly do here. So if you wanted to, if this is your preferred UI to work with, if you're just comfortable in Excel, working it in this way. Now, what's happening here is not a static representation of the data. There's this free add-in that you get with Oracle Enterprise Planning called Smart View that creates a dynamic connection to the underlying database. So making that change, submitting the data here is the same as if you were to make the change in the web UI. You can see here, that value is now updated just the same way as in the web UI with the audit trail captured, any context, commentary you may have included, any attachments you may have added as a result. It's really one-to-one. You just choose the UI. Now, if we push this down, you get an income statement, simplified view as you see it here. One item that I always get asked about is, can we have it not just a year total, but quarters, months? Absolutely. This is simply a selection you make as that user group into how you want that first representation of data to be presented to you. Again, expand, contract the detail as you see fit. Point being, it's all there for you to access. This is just an interaction choice that's made by you. Now, on the expense side, we certainly can forecast expenses from a driver-based perspective, if you like. Absolutely. What I've set up here is a subtly different view of the information for you to look at as a group. Let me select the appropriate dimension intersection that I know has data. And we get an example of a very quick and easy variance analysis view of information. And of course, for this entity, for this particular cost center, as you see it here. Once again, this is simply a representation of information that I've chosen to expose as part of this admin sign-in name, but this could be any type of variance that you'd like to see. As long as the data is in the system, you've got the ability to adjust, slice and dice, mix and match as you need to get the information in the best way possible. So we'll distill this down a little further. We've got this 21,859, and I've adjusted a little bit to put the cost center now on the row column, right? That salary account up here instead. So we can look at just this. We can look at actuals at 21. We can look at what the plan was, not entirely relevant here, but we'll keep it in there just for analysis purposes. I'm pointing this out because this is where context can become even more valuable. You've done your research into why this variance exists. Or something along those lines. It's great that you can add it. Right? We did that before in terms of the specific cell comment. The real beauty of this is now as an end user group, in the moment when you're running the analysis, you put your comment in. And now in a structured variance analysis report that will be reviewed, say, 5th business day of the month or before the plan is finalized, you'll see that comment cascades downstream through the system as well. So instead of having the conversation during those variance analysis review meetings where a person says, hey, you know, this variance is interesting. Can you tell me why this happened? You can proactively have that comment in that report that the person reviews, spend your time again on the decisions as opposed to the research possibly required in that moment. So that was from the actuals view, information coming over from whatever source GL you have. And then you can now look at FY21 for all of those operating expenses and plan accordingly. You certainly could, if you desire, go through line item by line item. Let's take this one, we'll upgrade it to 12. See how that rolls through the entire view of details. But maybe you want to increase the entire operating expense amount for the year in one fell swoop. Increase it 2.5%. From 18.99, as you see it on the bottom right, to 19.4. Boom. That quickly, that easily, the system updates all those values for you by that 2.5%. Upon save. Now, once again, everything is captured appropriately and according to the way you increased it 2.5%. All the reporting, whether it's a variance analysis report we just viewed, income statement, balance sheet, all of that information is captured. All of the information is reported or reportable for you. Now that is the financials, high level, and we'll do the same thing now as we step into projects, capital, and workforce. Pointing out again that Q&A section in Zoom is open. There's a chat piece as well if questions arise or if you have an idea that you want examined in a little further detail. Now, on the project side, you'll see as I step through this with you, it's really same construct in terms of dashboards first. And then down into the planning weeds, as it were, once we have a view of the high level details. So this now bridges the gap on the contra or the project side, excuse me, between detailed projects that organizations undertake and the overall impact on corporate resources. So it gives you a high level snapshot of how assets and resources are allocated, monitors performance, and gives you the information like return on investment. And the planning methods differ, right? So if you've got a contract project like you see here, fixed price, cost plus, time, materials, or capital projects that might be both capitalized and operational expenses. And then, of course, indirect or internal projects like, say, a new website, something along those lines. So one of the needs, of course, in the project space is to justify projects with particular benefits. So this allows you to capture both, of course, financial benefits and some of those non-financial benefits to help justify why a project should be pushed through as part of the plan. In this case, right, we're looking at those project details as it pertains to all of the projects that are being forecasted. And if we step down on the left, This is now the indirect project view, dashboards, project details, capital project view. Once again, I've made available to the end user as part of this conversation, all of this, but depending on what's required for different project forecasting groups, it may be one of these, it may be 5 of these, maybe 6, it all depends on how you configure the system to capture those requirements that you have. Then of course, overview of everything and anything as it pertains to those specific projects. Again, with this intersection of information, scenario, version, entity, reporting currency. So from a project perspective, where this has proven to be very valuable for user groups is, right, beginning of 2020, people had projects in place. March, April hit, and the, we'll say, world took a different turn than we were all used to. So where this was really valuable is with this project space, you could keep the original plan, right, because that's one of the scenarios, and simply create, now we'll call COVID plan. And so you can adjust or extend out some of those timelines as they existed for those specific projects, not just, you know, the start date, end date, but of course, the financials behind those projects. So whether it's expenses associated with completing a project either early or having to push that out further into the year, or the revenues associated with that project, you know, what's that going to look like on the income statement if we have to push a project out 5 months or 6 months. And so the beauty of this, right, is not that it can do this, it's the fact that the ease that you can do this with respect to making multiple different scenarios or multiple different versions and looking at all of those different possible iterations of what the project plan could look like, and of course the impact that would have on financials and letting you make the most appropriate, timely, transparent decision as a result of having all of that information. Very similar process on the capital side. Now, there is, of course, that sync and synergy that exists between project and capital planning, of course, because there are some projects that you've got capitalized items. And so you as a group don't have to copy paste, run through the depreciation schedules. Again, the system will manage that for you. So if a capital asset is part of a project, right, you'll be able to track and monitor it, yes, in the project space, and be able to see that detail in the capital planning realm as well. Whether it's new assets, leased or otherwise, from projects, as I mentioned before, there's funding that goes along with any of these assets, related expenses, and justification. Really, it's the place for you to manage that full breadth of those assets that are part of each one of these plans during respective time periods. Again, existing assets, intangible assets, and then the analysis that goes along with it. And then a very similar process unfolds on the workforce side. Full view, let me change it back to the entity, pardon me 1 second. Full view of, in this case, compensation as it exists as part of your planning for each period. Now, I have it configured for today's conversation to not have any of the compensation tied to specific projects, but you certainly can. As you see here, again, that synergy that exists between the planning modules, if you wanted to view compensation headcount as it related to any one of these projects that are being undertaken, drop down, you get that information in that moment. Full new hire list, if you wanted to add I run through this quickly to point out the fact that instead of having to take time, yes, analyzing with your time now, instead of taking time to enter information manually, the system has created that entirely new hiring requisition. Any of the salary, benefits, taxes, financial impact is now downstream and available for you to review and analyze. Same with existing employees. All that detail is here for you from a total comp perspective. Taxes, benefits, salary, all right here for you to analyze. Now, I've set it up in a way on this particular view, then to distill the information down now to employee level specifically. have access to see all their detail, any of the compensation as it rolls up for this particular period, FY21. This scenario, again, you have the ability, if you want to create a different scenario and adjust this particular individual's compensation numbers to see what impact might result. Easy. Do that just as I've done before with you, creating a new scenario, see how that impact rolls through. Here you can, I know many groups will do this, will manage any of the assumptions for workforce in general from a centralized corporate central perspective, and then have the different divisions, different cost centers, different departments actually manage these specific hiring requisitions and how that rolls through, but driven off of these assumptions that are utilized from a corporate-wide perspective. And know that the way that I've configured it right now, right, corporate-wide. However, if Division A requires a subtly different assumption set, then Division B certainly configure in that fashion to really accommodate geographical differences possibly that might exist across the organization. Same thing on the salary, earnings, configure for any taxes and all taxes that might exist as part of your compensation planning process. So certainly do this from a comp perspective, other expenses, training, travel, things of that nature. But dig a little deeper if you like, right? You can look at full compensation analysis. Skills, if you need to assign specific people to specific projects based on their skill and see how that expense breaks out by project, by skill set. Again, the information is here for you and the power is there for you to leverage, and then you can slice and dice and mix and match those different components to get the analysis you need. Other examples, if you want to break it out, as you see here, by demographics as well. Now, this is all great. And part of the beauty of these tools and what's really important, right, is not just the fact that you can enter detail, but it's the ease of you accessing that information for analysis purposes. And so while I've touched on dashboarding and we looked at that, variance analysis report with some of the commentary, we're going to dive a little differently into the reporting construct, right? Repository here, and one of these, we'll call it structured board quality reports that you can leverage for reviewing that data. Again, this is a creation of mine at the moment. You don't have to have it looking like this. This is but an example for me to take this starting structured view. Maybe you're in a meeting and somebody's curious about something or a data point that's not represented right on the screen as you see it here. Instead of that historical, hey, once you get back to your desk, will you review this information, get back to me? Examine that question right then and there. So this export, in query ready mode, all it does is open up that same report data view, this time in Excel. Let me move this out of the way. All right. Give me half a second. I'm going to format this a little differently. Okay. So you start with the exact same data intersection, the exact same data. So the 74601, 74601. Okay. What this does now is allows you as that FP&A group or anybody who's working with this and has analysis they want to undertake to, again, slice and dice the detail, allow them to examine the information in a different way. So, sake of argument, start from this. We just want net income, but we want to compare this net income, not just plan scenario as it is right now. It's not pulling over for some reason. Idea is that we're going to pull this in and be able to side by side look at plan versus budget versus forecast, all within the same point of view. Okay. Safe environment now, we change our plan. We want to look at total revenues only, and we'll go total expenses. We'll keep this. We want to look at March. Zoom out to the quarter. Now, let's pretend for a moment that this was the final analysis, little slice and dice that answered the question in that particular meeting. It's great. You could save this down to your desktop if you like, and access this anytime going forward. You know, refresh the views. You could update the year here to FY22, any number of these different dimensions, and then refresh and pull that information in. But the beauty of the cloud, right, along with it being powerful, as we've talked about so far, is the inherent collaboration that's built in. So if you want to, as an end user group, reuse this construct because you know somebody else is going to leverage this on a go-forward basis, save it as what's called a smart form. Now, what this has done, as you see down here, has taken that slice and diced view of that income statement where we started and created a view in the web UI for access by yourself at some point again in the future, with all that power to adjust and twist the dimensionality intersection that you want to see, but also any of the end users that have role access to view this type of information, now they can view what you've made. So that built-in and easy collaboration between folks within the tool really helps enable more of that dynamic and continuous planning, you know, period over period, year over year. Now, this is where we'll twist back ever so subtly into that dashboard discussion. Recall at the beginning of the conversation, we looked at this dashboard. So that's what I have started as my default. But you just created that ad hoc analysis, that view we just touched on, and you want to expose that as a dashboard for somebody. Okay, don't have to go to IT. Drag the view that you want. There you go. Now we could certainly format this in a different way, different colors and you know, different scale on the X and Y axis. Point of it is, in less than 15 seconds, we took some analysis that was done during a meeting, created now a graphical representation of that data for future use by ourselves, by anybody else who's got the similar role access to the data, without having to involve IT, letting you as that end user, that FP&A, that operational planning group, create the type of reporting, the type of interaction with the system that you need. Again, instead of that sometimes, as I mentioned before, lost in translation iterative process with IT groups. Save it down, and then it's there for future use. Again, the idea with the planning space is to have that tool, that interaction, that dynamic for the end user groups to ask those questions that are not just situational, that allow for that what if space to be utilized much more easily, much more seamlessly. Right? The operational independence that comes with using the Oracle EPM planning tool gives you that, how shall we say, makes it more practical to extend this across the enterprise. And so without having, or with having connected plans, you ensure alignment and synergy across those different planning spheres, which really at the end lets you instill a culture of planning around the enterprise that allows you to mine the wisdom of the planners that are absolutely closest to those operational details. Of course, that's the rocket ship there, leads to more agile and dynamic decisions across the entire business. All right, and that is the high level and best practice modules that exist within this planning space. Now I'm going to pivot to some of the questions that I've seen come up in this question and answer space. And if there are more, please put them in the system right now and I'll gladly get to them. It also looks like, oh, okay, some information in the chat, but it's not questions to be answered here. So the first question and answer is PBCS going away. So I would ask, if you don't mind, whoever asked that, to give me a little more detail about what do you mean going away. So Oracle's plan at the moment, right? We'll say SKUs that they used to sell 3-4 years ago for PBCS, that no longer exists. So now, right, it's that enterprise planning or enterprise suite of products, of which planning is one part. So it's not going away in terms of functionality, usability. So if you have PBCS, you can still use PBCS. It's all still there for you to use, but there is that decided move for future consideration about the planning suite in general. On the dashboard, is it possible to add comments that can be reviewed by management? So on the dashboard, dashboards I showed you were very graphically oriented, right? You could certainly, as an end user, create that graphic with the numerical information side by side. And in that case, yes, you can add comments in there that can be reviewed by upper management or by anybody who needs to review that detail. Can you tie EPM to Oracle Financials? Actually, yes, absolutely. Yep. That's that wonderful integration that exists within Oracle EPM Cloud that allows you to sync up that detail that you need from actual information. And again, it's not just Oracle Financials. Now, of course, it's very seamless with Oracle Financials. But if you have SAP as your GL, if you've got, well, on-premises Oracle like PeopleSoft, any of those, yes, you can sync this up to pull that actual detail in and run your side-by-side information. Those are the three questions I see live on the question and answer section now. There's about 8 minutes left in this hour that we have set aside for conversation today. Any other questions that you may have? Yes, one more came in. Is it possible to add the simple MR/NR reporting on dashboard? So you can connect MR/NR reporting, yes, to this planning space and set up what I would do is set up the icon in the navigation realm for you as the end user and be able to access that reporting from MR/NR as you need. Other questions? Please, if there are no more.
It looks like we've got one more. It said, can you please explain how the ETL process with EPM Enterprise Planning?
Yeah, that came through the chat, huh? So
yes.
with Oracle EPM Cloud, you have a couple options, right? There's the, well, let me do this, picture 1,000 words, right? I won't run through the whole ETL, but two ways. First way is if you're familiar with FDMEE, or known as on-premises tools, EPM Automate, for example, things of that nature. Oracle EPM Cloud has now this data management capability built in. So it's not a separate tool that exists outside of the processes like it once did. It's simply built in as you see it here. Second piece is there's this concept of Oracle Cloud or Oracle EPM integration agent that is this data management, but a little more robust. And what that allows you to do, as an example, is if you have an on-premises, for those that might have an on-premises GL system, as an example, that doesn't have a URL, the EPM integration agent allows still for that drill back after the information has been transformed and loaded into the EPM Cloud. And so if you're curious, I know Oracle has that integration agent detail out on their website. I'm trying to think. I could also, give you my email address if you want to have a further. I'll put it in the chat for those interested. If you really want to get down into the weeds and have a conversation about what that might look like, or any questions or curiosities you might have, in the chat, I'll open that up. That's my email address. Please don't hesitate to email me. I'll gladly, set up a WebEx or Zoom in this case. Excuse me. Zoom conversation, phone call conversation, whatever it is that you need to help you out as part of your cloud journey.
All right, any last minute questions for Stefan? All right. If not,
Well,
we will thank Stefan for his time today. Thank you so much for presenting on Planning Cloud. Obviously, this is a fantastic topic, and especially heading into 2021, a lot of people are thinking about planning and enterprise planning. So thanks so much for preparing this presentation today. We really appreciate it.
yeah, one last thing. So two final questions it looks like came up. First one, is this presentation going to be shared? Right, there should be once, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ali, but once this recording is all, we'll say, configured, the webcast recording will still be out on the web. Right?
That's correct. Yep. So once we get it processed, it should be up later today on the same link that you registered at.
Yep. So it'll be easy for you to access at that point. And then the last question here before we go, let's see, Franklin, sorry to call you out, that's who asked it, is can you connect EPM dashboard directly to Oracle Fusion? At the moment, I don't believe that you can. If you want to, well, maybe let me ask you this question in a little different way to help answer. Are you trying to obtain trial balance style information through a dashboard like this, or are you looking for transactional detail as it exists in the Fusion GL? And maybe that's a question we could have. Send me an email. We could certainly have a phone call, or again another Zoom if you want to dive deeper. Ideally, both. Okay. Transactions, no. And I know within the, and again, ERP is not my area of expertise. I know enough to be dangerous, but that OTBI, Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence, exists in that space to create, I think, types of dashboards like on AR aging or things of that nature. Trial balance detail, yes, it's not a direct. Well, let me rephrase it. There's that sync between Fusion and EPM Cloud where you could then leverage that actual type of detail and present it in a dashboard as you see it here. But again, that is in many ways a configuration choice that you make in terms of who really needs access to that detail. So if it is, for example, more of the accounting side, getting transaction detail, I would, OTBI, there are tools within Fusion to do that. If it's more the FP&A group, maybe some folks on the close side, yeah, you can certainly configure those types of dashboards in EPM Cloud. Hope that helps. But again, if you want to have further conversation, my email was in the chat box. Send me an email. I'm absolutely glad to take the time and have more conversations with you. About 2 minutes, assuming no more questions. Thanks all of you for taking the time today. I hope this was helpful. I love doing this, so more information, more help I can provide, please let me know.
Awesome. Thanks again, Stefan. Thanks everybody for attending today.